Seriously, have you ever felt like you've sacrificed everything for your partner's family only to have it thrown back in your face? To be called a freeloader, have your body shamed, and even get kicked out of the very house you pay for? Ugh, if that's you, hang in there. Because today, I've got a story that will speak to your soul. Our story is called The Final Invoice for Mrs. Sharon. It's about a woman named Grace, whose patience was met with nothing but contempt. But don't worry, the ending will have you cheering and saying, "You get what you deserve." Before we dive into the juicy drama, I need to ask for your support to keep this channel going with more amazing stories. Go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button right now. And let's get to know each other. Drop your name and home state in the comments below and type "here." All right, are you ready to see instant karma served to an arrogant mother-in-law? Buckle up your emotional seatbelts, and let's begin. The soft clacking of fingers on a keyboard was the only sound in the living room. The clock on the wall read 1 a.m., but Grace's eyes were still glued to the bright screen of her laptop. Around her, neat stacks of customer orders from her online boutique were piled high, ready for shipping. This was Grace's nightly routine, the engine that drove the small family's finances. Meanwhile, a gentle snore drifted from the adjacent bedroom, where her husband, Sean, slept soundly, without a care in the world. Morning arrived with a scorching sun that beat down relentlessly. Grace had just finished making breakfast and tidying up the last of her work from the night before when a cheerful commotion erupted at the front door. It was Sharon, her mother-in-law, returning from brunch with her neighborhood friends. The middle-aged woman's face was glowing. In her hand, she brandished a new designer handbag, a shockingly bright red that screamed for attention. "Oh, Brenda, honey, this is the bag I was telling you about. Genuine imported leather," Sharon announced, her voice deliberately loud enough for the next-door neighbor to overhear. "My boy, my Sean, he just knows how to spoil his mother." He said, "Mom, just get the most expensive one. You deserve to look classy." Grace, who was sweeping the porch, could only let out a long, silent sigh. The lie stung. Sean, buy a $2,000 handbag? She wanted to laugh. He barely had enough to cover his own monthly expenses, let alone buy luxury goods. The bag had been purchased with a supplementary credit card, Grace's credit card, that Sean held. And the bill, of course, would land squarely in Grace's lap at the end of the month. Sharon shot Grace a dismissive glance before turning her attention back to her neighbor. "That's what you get when you raise a successful, devoted son. All my hard work paid off." Grace retreated inside, swallowing the bitter pill of her own invisibility. She didn't crave praise or accolades, but she wanted to be valued, not treated like an unseen, walking ATM. That afternoon, Sean came home from work early. He tossed his messenger bag onto the sofa and immediately yelled for his wife. "Grace! Hey, Grace, can you make me some iced tea? It's burning up out there." Grace, who was in the middle of reviewing her monthly sales reports, got up at once. She brought her husband a tall glass of sweet iced tea. "Honey, the electricity bill went up again this month," she said softly, trying to broach the topic of their finances. "The AC in your mom's room is running 24/7, even when she's not home." Sean took a long, noisy slurp of his tea and snorted. "Oh, come on, Grace. Are you really going to start nickel and diming my mother? Just let her be comfortable. It's her house, too. Besides, I'm making good money. I can cover it." Grace fell silent. Making good money? Sean's salary as a low-level admin assistant was gone before it even hit their joint account, eaten up by the payments on the sports car he'd insisted on buying and his own spending habits. For the 3 years they'd been married, it was Grace's savings and business profits that had kept their financial ship from sinking. That evening, the atmosphere at the dinner table was tense. Sharon stared down at the plate of food in front of her with a look of utter disgust. It was just a simple tomato soup with grilled cheese sandwiches. "Sean," Sharon began, her tone dripping with a fabricated sweetness, "I saw on Instagram that new fusion seafood place opened downtown. All my friends have already been. When are you going to take me? I'm so sick of eating this peasant food." Sean glanced at Grace, giving her a look that said, "You handle this." Grace looked down, pretending to be absorbed in her soup. "Maybe after my next paycheck, Mom?" Sean offered lamely. "Paycheck? That'll take forever," Sharon shot back, her eyes now fixed on Grace. "Your wife's little online business is booming, isn't it? Can't she spare a little to treat her mother-in-law for once? Grace slowly put her spoon down. Sharon, the profits from this month have to be reinvested. I need to stock up for the holiday season. Besides, we just paid off the credit card bill for your new handbag. Sharon's face turned red, not from shame, but from rage. She slammed her spoon onto her plate, creating a loud clang. Oh, so you're throwing one little bag in my face now? Are you that arrogant? Do you think my son can't provide for me? Let me tell you something, Grace. A wife's job is to serve her husband and his family. Your money is his money. Sean just sat there, staring at his plate, not daring to utter a single word in his wife's defense. And another thing, Sharon continued, her eyes now boring into Grace's flat stomach. You should spend less time making money and more time remembering your purpose. Look at the neighbor's daughter, Lori. Married a year and she's already got a baby. You've been married 3 years and that belly is still empty. This house feels so quiet. There's no sound of a baby crying. What's the use of having all this money if a woman can't even provide an heir? Why keep a barren woman around? The words struck Grace like a lightning bolt to the heart. Her throat tightened, and her eyes began to burn. She looked at Sean, pleading with him to say something. It's not her fault, Mom. Or, be patient, Mom. We're trying. But he said nothing. He turned away, pretending to be deeply focused on his sandwich, letting his mother drive the verbal dagger deeper. Grace clenched her fists under the table, her nails digging into her palms, trying to ground herself against the invisible pain. This house, these people, they were eroding her sanity day by day. But that night, Grace chose to remain silent. She didn't know it yet, but her silence was the calm before the hurricane she was about to unleash. The days that followed were thick with a tension you could cut with a knife. After that painful dinner, Grace threw herself into her work, hoping that by staying busy, she could numb the ache in her heart. But that afternoon, her body finally gave out. Her head throbbed from lack of sleep, and her muscles ached after a long day of packing and shipping a flood of orders. The house was quiet. Sharon was taking a nap in her air-conditioned room, and Sean had just gotten home and gone straight for a shower. Grace decided to sit for a moment on the living room sofa. The plush, gray sectional was one of the first things she had bought with her own savings when they moved into the house. She turned on the 50-inch flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, another luxury paid for by her hard work. She flipped to a light-hearted sitcom, hoping the canned laughter might ease the tightness in her chest. Leaning back, she closed her eyes, just listening to the TV. For the first time all week, she felt a sliver of relaxation. She deserved to enjoy the amenities in her own home, if only for a moment. But the peace was short-lived. The sound of heavy, stomping footsteps grew closer. Grace opened her eyes to see Sharon emerging from her room, a sour look on her face. Her hair was messy from her nap, but her eyes already radiated hostility. Sharon marched straight to the coffee table, snatched the remote from beside Grace, and, without a word, pressed the power button. The screen went black. A sudden silence fell over the room, broken only by the hum of the AC from Sharon's open bedroom door. Grace was startled. "Sharon, why did you turn it off?" "I was just watching for a few minutes to rest," she asked, her voice still polite despite the storm brewing inside her. Sharon tossed the remote onto the sofa. She stood with her hands on her hips, looking down at her daughter-in-law as if she were a piece of trash on her clean floor. "Rest? You think life is all about relaxing?" Sharon snapped, her voice shrill. "Look at the clock! It's the middle of the afternoon and you're lounging around watching TV. Electricity costs money, Grace. Don't be so wasteful. Just because you think you make money, you can just squander it all you want in this house?" Grace took a deep breath, fighting to keep her composure. "Sharon, I paid the electric bill yesterday. I was only watching for 15 minutes. What's wrong with that?" At Grace's response, Sharon's eyes widened. She took a step closer, pointing a finger decorated with a thick gold ring right in Grace's face. "Oh, so now you're talking back? Feeling high and mighty because you paid a measly bill?" Just then, the bathroom door opened. Sean emerged with a towel around his neck, his hair still damp. He saw the standoff between his wife and his mother. Grace turned to him, her eyes begging for help. It was a look of desperation, a plea for him to, for once, be a mediator. To tell his mother that Grace had a right to be there, that Grace was also the owner of this home. "Sean," Grace whispered. Sean paused, looking from his furious mother to his fragile wife, But instead of defending her, or even trying to de-escalate, he looked away. He picked up his phone from the dining table and pretended to be engrossed in his messages, acting as if he hadn't seen or heard a thing. Seeing her son's passive response, Sharon felt emboldened. A cynical smile played on her lips. She turned back to Grace, victorious. "Listen to me," Sharon said, her voice now a chilling whisper that cut to the bone. "Go to your room, you barren woman. This living room is mine. This house belongs to my son. You are just living here. If you can't give us a grandchild, the least you can do is not run up the electric bill with your useless shows." Those words, "This living room is mine, barren woman." Grace's world stopped spinning. She no longer heard the traffic outside. All she could hear was a long, painful ringing in her ears. She looked at the sofa she'd bought, the TV she'd made payments on, the walls she'd paid to have painted. Everything suddenly felt foreign. Sharon waved her hand dismissively, as if shooing away a fly. "Go on. Get out of here. It pains me to even look at you sitting there like you own the place." Grace slowly rose to her feet. There were no tears this time. The sadness that usually overwhelmed her had been replaced by something cold and hard in her chest. She glanced one last time at Sean. He was now sitting at the dining table, his back to them, scrolling through his phone as if she didn't exist. Sean's silent betrayal was far more painful than Sharon's insults. It was a confirmation. She fully understood now. She wasn't a wife in this house. She wasn't a daughter-in-law. She was just a stranger whose bank account was being exploited. Without another word, Grace turned and walked towards her bedroom. Her steps were heavy, but resolute. This was not a retreat to cry into her pillow like she used to. No, this was different. As her hand touched the doorknob, she heard Sharon huff behind her, muttering to Sean, "See? That's how you do it. You have to be firm with a wife, or she'll walk all over you." Grace closed the bedroom door softly. The click of the lock echoed in the silence. She leaned against the door, surveying the room that had witnessed 3 years of her silent sacrifices. Her gaze fell upon a black suitcase on top of the closet, dusty from long-term disuse, a relic of vacations never taken. A decision had been made, not with shouts or arguments, but with a deadly quiet. Tomorrow, this house was in for the shock of its life. Behind the locked bedroom door, Grace stood perfectly still. There were no sobs, no tears streaming down her cheeks. The pain that had just pierced her heart was slowly morphing into a cold, terrifying calm. Sharon's words, "This living room is mine," echoed in her head. But now, they weren't an insult. They were a signal for her freedom. She moved with purpose. She pulled a chair over to the closet, climbing on it to retrieve the medium-sized black suitcase from the top shelf. A thin layer of dust coated it, a symbol of all the postponed trips and canceled vacations, money always diverted to fund her mother-in-law's vanity. Grace brought the suitcase down, wiped it clean, and opened it on the bed. She didn't pack much. A few work outfits, some casual clothes, her toiletries. She left behind the fancy dresses Sean had bought for her with her money, of course. She wanted to take nothing that was tied to the fiction of this house. She moved to her desk in the corner. She packed her laptop, chargers, and external hard drive. These were her lifeline, the source of income that had been feeding 3 mouths in this house. Without them, she was just a woman. With them, she was an unstoppable force. Next, she opened the bottom drawer of her dresser, where she kept a thick blue file folder. She checked its contents meticulously, their marriage certificate, her college diplomas, her personal investment statements, and several banking agreements. Not a single important paper would be left behind. Finally, she opened a small jewelry box. She slid the wedding ring off her finger, stared at it for a second with an empty gaze, and placed it on the vanity. In its place, she put on a white gold diamond ring, an heirloom from her late mother that was infinitely more precious. Once everything was ready, Grace took out her phone. She found a contact named Jenna, attorney. The phone rang twice before a voice answered. "Hey, Grace, what's up? You never call this late." Jenna's voice was laced with concern. Grace took a deep breath, steadying her voice. "Jenna, sorry to bother you. I need your help. It's time. Activate Plan B." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Jenna, her best friend and financial lawyer, knew exactly what that code meant. They had discussed it a year ago when Grace first started feeling mistreated, but back then, Grace had chosen to stay, hoping love would win. Are you sure, Grace? Plan B is total cutoff. I've never been more sure. Revoke all privileges. Block the supplementary card Sean has. Freeze the joint account, and first thing tomorrow morning, prepare the documents to withdraw my name as guarantor on all his loans. I want every single financial access point they have shut down within 24 hours. Okay, understood. I'll start the process tonight through the priority banking system. The physical notices will be couriered tomorrow morning. Where are you now? I'm leaving tonight. I'll stay at my old studio apartment. Thanks, Jenna. Be safe, Grace. You deserve so much better, Jenna said before hanging up. Grace ended the call. She zipped up the suitcase with a decisive pull. The loud zip sounded like a coffin closing on her marriage. She dragged the suitcase out of the room. The wheels rumbled softly on the tile floor. As she passed the living room, Sharon and Sean were still there. Sharon was propped up on the sofa, watching the TV she had turned back on. Sean was smoking on the patio, playing a game on his phone. They both looked up, startled by the sound of the suitcase. Sean was the first to react. He put his phone down, his eyes widening at the sight of Grace, fully dressed, with a suitcase in hand. Grace? Where are you going with a suitcase this late? He asked, a confused tone in his voice, as if he had amnesia about what had just happened. Grace didn't answer. She didn't even look at him. She kept walking towards the front door, her gaze fixed straight ahead. Sharon scoffed, finding her daughter-in-law's drama excessive. Oh, let her go, Sean. She's just trying to threaten us, probably going to a friend's house. Women get so dramatic when they're feeling sensitive, she said dismissively. Grace opened the front door. The cool night air hit her face. Seeing Grace actually step outside without so much as a word, Sharon's temper flared. She stood up and yelled at Grace's retreating back. Yeah, go on. Leave if you're so brave. Don't think for a second we'll come looking for you, you ungrateful wife. Get told off a little and you run away. Sharon's voice shattered the quiet of the suburban night. And don't come back until you can give me a grandchild. This house doesn't need a barren woman taking up space. Grace paused for a moment at the gate. Sean remained where he was, making no move to follow her, convinced this was all a bluff. Grace didn't answer the shouts. She didn't turn around to curse them out. She simply continued walking to the Uber that was already waiting for her. The driver quickly put her suitcase in the trunk. As Grace got in and closed the door, she looked back through the window. Sean and Sharon were still standing on the porch, their faces arrogant and smug, feeling like they had won by driving the nuisance out of their home. They had no idea that as Grace's car pulled away, the lifeblood of that house was leaving with her. The address in the app is correct, ma'am? The driver asked. Yes, sir. Just drive, Grace replied softly. And don't look back. That night, Grace slept alone in her small apartment. There was no inconsiderate snoring, no painful jabs from a mother-in-law. For the first time in 3 years, she felt free. Meanwhile, back at the house, the time bomb Grace had set with a single phone call began its countdown. Tick, tock. Towards the explosion that would come with the dawn, the morning sun streamed through the gaps in the living room curtains. The clock showed it was already 9 a.m., an unusually late start for a household that was typically buzzing with the sound of a blender or a spatula on a hot pan since sunrise. But today, the house was eerily silent. Sharon stretched under her plush comforter. She opened her eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. The morning air felt so much fresher. There was no sight of Grace's face, which, in her opinion, always cast a gloomy pall over the house. Finally, Sharon murmured to herself, running her fingers through her hair, the house is peaceful again, no stranger telling me what to do. With the light steps of a queen waking from her beauty sleep, Sharon walked out of her room. She envisioned a warm cup of coffee and a plate of scrambled eggs and bacon already waiting for her on the dining table. Though she often criticized Grace's cooking, she couldn't deny that she always polished off every breakfast her daughter-in-law made. But the smile on Sharon's face vanished the moment she entered the dining room. The table was completely bare. There was no steaming mug, no smell of coffee, not even a plate set out. All that remained were a few crumbs from last night's dinner, which Grace had left before she could clean up. "Sean!" Sharon yelled, her voice instantly sharp, breaking the morning silence. "Sean, get up!" Sean's bedroom door creaked open. He emerged looking like he'd just been woken up, his eyes still squinting against the light. His t-shirt was wrinkled and his hair stuck out in every direction. "What is it, Mom?" "It's so early," Sean complained, scratching his stomach. "It's my day off. I'm hungry, Sean. Your precious wife is completely out of line." "I don't care if she runs off, but she could have at least had the decency to make breakfast for her husband and mother-in-law before she left." "What is this? An empty table?" Sharon grumbled, gesturing wildly at the bare dining table. Sean yawned, not particularly concerned. He shuffled towards the large, double-door refrigerator in the kitchen. "Just make some eggs yourself, Mom. It's not that hard." His hand pulled open the refrigerator door. A puff of cold air escaped, but the sight inside made his eyes go wide. It was empty. The glass shelves were practically deserted. Usually, the fridge was packed with steaks, fresh vegetables, cartons of organic milk for Sharon, and an assortment of cold drinks. Now, all that was left was a half-empty bottle of water, a single cracked egg, and a jar of salsa with dried crust around the rim. "Whoa, it's empty," Sean muttered, confused. He'd forgotten that Friday was Grace's usual day for the big weekly grocery run, and yesterday was Friday. Grace had left before restocking their food supply. "What did you say? Empty?" Sharon peered into the fridge, her face contorted in disgust. "Oh my God, that spiteful witch. She's trying to starve us to death, Sean." Before their anger over the food situation could fully ignite, another sound pierced the air. Beep, beep, beep. It was a sharp, insistent alarm from the smart meter on the wall. A digital display flashed, "Service suspension imminent." It was a warning that the power was about to be cut off for non-payment. Sharon covered her ears. "Ugh, turn that noise off, Sean. It's giving me a headache." Sean sighed in annoyance. He glanced at the meter near the front door. A red light was blinking rapidly. "The bill's overdue, Mom." "Grace mentioned it was due yesterday." "Well, pay it." "Are you waiting for me to figure it out?" Sharon snapped. Sean fumbled for his phone. He opened his mobile banking app, but his thumb froze over the screen. He remembered his personal checking account had less than $200 in it. Usually, he'd just ask Grace for a transfer, or she would handle it automatically. "Ugh, I don't want to use my own money," Sean thought grumpily. He slipped his phone back into his pocket. "Well, are you going to pay it or not?" Sharon pressed. "I'll do it later, Mom," Sean said dismissively, walking over to the sofa and flopping down. "Grace will probably pay it in a minute. She can do it from her phone. You know how she is, Mom. She's a softie. She wouldn't let you suffer in the heat without your AC. She's probably watching the security cameras on her phone right now, waiting for us to get desperate so she can swoop in and pay it and look like a hero." Sharon nodded, finding her son's logic plausible. She joined him on the sofa, ignoring the incessant beeping. "You're right. It's just an empty threat. She's probably crying her eyes out in some cheap motel, waiting for you to call and beg her to come home." "I'm not calling," Sean said arrogantly. "Let her be. Once her money runs out, she'll come crawling back on her own. She'll be begging at your feet, Mom." "Exactly. Don't give her an inch." "Let's teach her what life is like without a husband," Sharon added. "All right, just order some food. I want that gourmet brunch from downtown, the one with all the fancy toppings. Use your account that's linked to Grace's credit card." Sean nodded. He pulled out his phone and ordered 2 servings of a lavish brunch, complete with sides. The total came to nearly $100, an absurd price for breakfast, but they didn't care. It wasn't their money. The order was confirmed. Sean smiled. "Done, Mom. Food's on the way. We can just sit back and relax. Grace can leave, but the perks stay." They shared a small laugh, amused by what they saw as Grace's pathetic attempt at rebellion. They were confident that their world was perfectly fine, that Grace was just a servant on a short, unauthorized leave who would soon come back begging for forgiveness. Amidst their laughter, the meter on the wall kept beeping, a steady countdown to a catastrophe they couldn't see coming. They had no idea that the morning's peace was a final gift before the real storm hit. The afternoon sun was merciless, baking the roof and causing the temperature inside the house to soar. After gorging themselves on the expensive brunch, Sharon and Sean were sprawled out in the living room. Their comfort, however, was abruptly shattered at precisely 2 p.m. The annoying beeping from the smart meter suddenly stopped. Not because the bill was paid, but because the power was gone. The ceiling fan, which had been spinning lazily, slowed to a complete stop. The TV's standby light went dark. The hum of the refrigerator died. "Hey, it's off!" Sharon yelped, jolting upright. Beads of sweat were already forming on her forehead. "Sean, the power is actually off! It's so hot in here!" Sean, who had been playing a game on his phone, the Wi-Fi was also dead, groaned in frustration. He tossed his phone onto the sofa. "Damn it! Grace is really pushing it, Mom. She still hasn't paid it. She's doing this on purpose to torture us. Call her." "Yell at her," Sharon commanded, grabbing an old-fashioned magazine to fan her neck, which was already sticky with sweat. "That ungrateful woman. Living off our generosity, and she can't even maintain the facilities." Sean tried calling Grace again, but it went straight to voicemail. The combination of heat and anger made the house feel even more oppressive than the temperature outside. In the middle of Sharon's endless tirade against her daughter-in-law, a sudden sound made them both jump. Bang, bang, bang. Someone was pounding on the front gate, hard and impatiently. It wasn't the polite knock of a visitor, but a demanding slam. Sean and Sharon exchanged a look. A moment later, a triumphant smile spread across Sharon's face. She let out a small, satisfied laugh. "Well, well, well," she said, pointing toward the door with her magazine fan. "Listen to that, Sean. That must be your wife home already. See how hard she's knocking? She must be panicking because she can't get in. She left her keys on the vanity last night." Sean smirked, adjusting his posture to look more imposing. "She's probably overheating out there, Mom. Or maybe she had to run from a cab driver because she didn't have cash." "Don't open it right away, Sean," Sharon said quickly as he started to get up. "Let her bang on the gate for a while. Let her hands get sore. Let her know how it feels to be ignored. We were starving this morning and she didn't care. Now it's our turn to let her bake in the sun." Bang, bang. The pounding came again, louder this time, accompanied by the rattling of the iron gate. "Sean," Sharon instructed, "when you open the door, don't smile. Put on an angry face. Tell her if she wants to set foot in this house again, she has to kiss my feet first. You got it, Mom. I'll teach her a lesson she'll never forget." After letting the pounding continue for another 5 minutes, Sean finally stood up. He walked to the front door with deliberately slow steps, composing his face into what he hoped was a fearsome scowl. In his mind, he was already rehearsing the scathing welcome he'd give the crying, apologetic Grace he imagined on the other side. He unlocked the door and threw it open with a dramatic flourish. "Hey, what's with all the racket? Had enough of your little tantrum? Now get in here and kiss my." Sean's words died in his throat. His eyes widened and his mouth fell open, but no sound came out. The person standing before him was not Grace. There was no petite, teary-eyed woman as he'd expected. Instead, 3 large men stood on his porch. The one in front wore a crisp, button-down shirt, but his face was stern and humorless. He held a thick, red file folder. The 2 men behind him were dressed in black polo shirts, their muscular arms suggesting they could crush anything in their path. An aura of intimidation immediately enveloped Sean. His bravado vanished into thin air. Who are you?" Sean stammered, taking an involuntary step back. The man in the shirt looked Sean up and down with a piercing gaze. He ignored the question and asked one of his own, his voice a deep, authoritative baritone. "Is this the residence of Mr. Sean and Mrs. Sharon Miller?" "Yes, that's right. I'm Sean," he answered hesitantly. Sharon, curious why she didn't hear Grace crying, shouted from inside, "Sean, who is it? Tell Grace to get in here and stop being so dramatic." The man in the shirt allowed a small, cold smile to touch his lips. He stepped onto the porch uninvited, followed by his 2 imposing colleagues. "Sorry, ma'am, we're not with Mrs. Grace," the man said, opening the red folder. "My name is Reno. I'm from the bank's Asset Recovery and Foreclosure Division." Sean swallowed hard. The words asset recovery and foreclosure sounded terrifying and alien to him. What's this about?" "You must have the wrong address," Sean said, trying to deny the dark premonition creeping up his spine. Mr. Reno shook his head slowly. "No mistake, sir. We're here looking for the primary financial guarantor for the assets at this address, a Mrs. Grace Collins. However, since she is unreachable and has, as of this morning, formally withdrawn her guarantee, this matter now falls to you and Mrs. Sharon Miller." Sharon finally appeared at the doorway. Her smug expression had been replaced by a pale mask of fear as she saw the 3 large strangers crowding her porch. "What is going on here? Who are you people? Don't you try anything funny. This is my house," she snapped, trying to cling to the last shreds of her authority, though her voice trembled. "Mr. Reno looked at Sharon with cold, unblinking eyes. "Your house? Are you sure about that?" The simple question hung in the air, a suffocating tension that squeezed the breath from both mother and son. The scorching afternoon suddenly felt frigid, as if a storm cloud had just parked itself directly over their heads. "How dare you speak to me like that?" Sharon stepped forward, her fear momentarily replaced by a burst of outrage. Her fingers shot out, pointing directly at Mr. Reno's face. "Let me tell you something, mister. This house was bought and paid for by my son, Sean. He worked his fingers to the bone to provide a decent home for his mother. So don't you dare question who owns this house." Sean, standing behind his mother, nodded quickly, trying to puff out his chest though his knees felt like jelly. "That's right. This is my house. The deed is in my name, Sean Miller." "Are you trying to scam us? Extort us? Mister?" Reno didn't get angry. He chuckled softly, a dry, dismissive sound. He glanced at his 2 stone-faced colleagues as if sharing an inside joke. "Paid for? Worked his fingers to the bone?" he repeated with biting sarcasm. He slowly pulled a long document from his red folder, one with the official letterhead of a major bank. "Let's clear up this little fairy tale with a dose of reality, shall we? Mr. Reno held the paper up for Sean to see. "Please, read this, Mr. Miller. It's a copy of your mortgage agreement, your auto loan, and a personal line of credit for home furnishings. All of it is in your name, Sean Miller, as the primary debtor, correct?" Sean squinted at the document. His name was there in black and white. "Yes, see, it's my name, so it's mine," he exclaimed proudly, thinking he'd won. "Read the line below that, sir, Mr. Reno cut in sharply. "The one that says, primary guarantor and source of funds." Sean's eyes moved down. There, in clear typed letters, was the name, Grace Collins. "For the last 3 years, Mr. Reno began, his tone like a teacher lecturing a particularly dense student. "The mortgage on this lovely home has been $4,000 a month. The payment on your sports car, $700 a month, and the credit card bills for Mrs. Miller's lifestyle have averaged about $2,000 a month. This family's total monthly liability is nearly $7,000. Mr. Reno stared directly at Sean. "May I ask, Mr. Miller, what is the salary of an administrative assistant?" 5, maybe $6,000 a month, before taxes?" Sean's face flushed a deep crimson. Cold sweat trickled down his back. He couldn't answer. The simple math had him trapped. "Mrs. Miller," Mr. Reno continued, turning his gaze to the older woman, "your son never bought this house. Your son only lent his name. The person who paid every penny, for every brick, for every blast of cold air from the AC you enjoy, was Mrs. Grace Collins. The wife you called a freeloader was, in fact, the foundation holding this roof over your heads." Sharon staggered backward, her hand fumbling for the wall to support herself. No, that's impossible. You're lying." "Grace just sells junk online. How could she have that kind of money? Sean gave her the money." "Bank records don't lie, ma'am," Mr. Reno stated coldly. "It was Mrs. Collins's account that was debited automatically on the 1st of every month, never a day late, until today." Mr. Reno snapped the red folder shut with a loud thwack. "This morning at 8 a.m., our office received a notarized letter from Mrs. Collins. She has officially resigned as the guarantor for all of Mr. Miller's debts and has revoked all auto-debit authorizations from her personal accounts. She has stated she is no longer responsible for a single cent of debt associated with this address." A deathly silence fell over the porch. Sean felt the ground drop out from under him. His fantasy world, where he was the successful head of the household, had just been shattered into a million pieces. Therefore, Mr. Reno's voice turned gravely serious. "Since the primary guarantor has withdrawn, the entire balance of these loans is now due immediately. The bank has no faith in Mr. Miller's ability to pay, given his limited income. We are here to demand full payment of the outstanding balance of $450,000, or we will begin asset seizure." $450,000? Sean whispered, his voice barely audible. And since Mrs. Miller so loudly proclaimed, "This living room is mine, please feel free to prove that ownership by paying the bill. If you cannot, then as of this moment, this living room and everything in it belongs to the bank." Sharon stared blankly at the house behind her, the house she had so proudly shown off to her friends, the house from which she had so smugly banished Grace. She now understood that without Grace, this house was nothing but a mountain of debt. "Wait, sir, please, give us some time," Sean pleaded, his voice trembling. I'll call my wife. It must be a misunderstanding. I'm sure she'll pay. Please don't take anything yet." Mr. Reno shook his head firmly. "Mrs. Collins has already blocked any attempts from our office to negotiate on your behalf. Her instructions were clear. Collect from the debtor or repossess the collateral. Mr. Sportnown," Reno glanced at his expensive watch, "you have 1 hour to pack your personal belongings. After that, the repossession team will enter and take all secured assets. The TV, the refrigerator, the sofa, and the car in the garage. Everything." "You can't do that!" Sharon shrieked hysterically. "Those are my things. I picked out the colors. I use them every day. You use them, but Grace paid for them." Mr. Reno cut her off flatly. "And since she has stopped paying, they are no longer yours." Mr. Reno gestured to his 2 men, who moved to flank the doorway. "Ready. 1 hour. Mr. Miller. Mrs. Miller. Your time starts now. My advice? Don't waste it crying. Start packing. Because you won't be sleeping here tonight." Sean collapsed onto the porch floor, his legs giving out completely. He looked at his mother, hoping for a miracle. But Sharon herself was ashen-faced, a living ghost, muttering Grace's name under her breath, not in prayer, but in a torrent of curses mixed with a deep, dawning regret. In the distance, dark clouds began to gather, as if the universe itself agreed that Judgment Day for this family had finally arrived. 1 hour, 60 minutes, a stretch of time that usually dragged on, felt like the blink of an eye to Sean and Sharon. Panic was no longer an adequate word for the atmosphere in that living room. It was utter chaos. Sharon paced back and forth like a caged animal, wringing the hem of her designer blouse. Sweat poured down her face, causing her foundation to streak. "Sean, do something. Don't just sit there gawking," she shrieked, her voice so high-pitched that the 2 men guarding the door glanced over with bored expressions. "Call that wife of yours. Tell her I'm sick. Tell her I'm dying. Make her feel guilty so she'll wire the money. I don't care how you do it. Just get these horrible men out of my house before the neighbors see." Sean, trembling on the sofa, was frantically tapping at his phone. His thumb jabbed at the contact labeled "My Wife" for the 10th time in 5 minutes. "It's not working, Mom. It won't connect," he cried out in despair. He pressed the phone to his ear, desperate to hear Grace's voice, but all he got was the cold, robotic operator. "The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again. Try WhatsApp. Send a voice message. Cry if you have to," Sharon urged, shaking his shoulders violently. Sean opened the messaging app, but his hope was instantly crushed. Grace's profile picture, once a smiling selfie, was now a blank, gray silhouette. Her last seen status was gone. A single gray checkmark. "She blocked me, Mom. She blocked everything," Sean whispered, his face turning the color of ash. "Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, my phone number. Grace completely cut me off." "That snake!" Sharon spat, stomping her foot. "How dare she block her own husband? This was her plan all along. She's trying to destroy us." In the corner, Mr. Reno stood calmly, checking his watch. 45 minutes remaining. "Mr. Miller, I'm not seeing any initiative to make a payment. Would you like to pay via debit card now? I have the machine right here." Sean's eyes lit up for a second. He remembered his wallet. He pulled it from his back pocket and, with shaky hands, extracted a sleek, black credit card, a platinum card, the magic card he'd always bragged about to his friends, the one that never failed when treating them to fancy dinners or buying the latest gadgets. I'll pay a portion of it," Sean stammered, scrambling to his feet and approaching Mr. Reno. "What's the minimum I have to pay to get you to leave for today? 1,000? 2,000? Just swipe this." He held out the card, his last beacon of hope. The card had a massive limit, and Grace always paid the balance in full. Mr. Reno took the card, glanced at it, and inserted it into his portable terminal. Sean held his breath. Sharon stopped pacing, her eyes glued to the small machine. Their fate hung in the balance. Mr. Reno keyed in an amount and handed the terminal to Sean for the PIN. Sean quickly punched in the 4 digits. Processing. The silence was deafening. Beep! The screen flashed red. A small slip of paper spooled out. Mr. Reno tore it off and read it aloud. Transaction declined. Card frozen. Sean's eyes bulged. What? No, that's impossible. Try it again. The signal must be bad in here. Mr. Reno shrugged but complied. He ran the card again. The same result. This card was reported lost or stolen by the primary account holder this morning. Sir, Mr. Reno explained flatly, handing the useless plastic back to Sean. The bank immediately blocked all associated cards. This is now worth less than the plastic it's made of. Sean's knees buckled. He fell back onto the sofa. The card slipped from his grasp and clattered onto the tile floor. The symbol of his false prosperity, his identity as a provider, was now officially trash. Grace, Sean whispered in disbelief. She actually did it. It's not about being cruel, sir, Mr. Reno interjected sharply. It's about being financially intelligent. Why continue to fund someone who doesn't appreciate the source of the funds? Hearing this, Sharon burst into tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of rage and humiliation. Oh God, I'm ruined. If that card doesn't work, what are we going to pay with? I only have $20 in my purse. Sean, you have savings, right? You've been working for years. You must have something saved. Sean hung his head, avoiding his mother's demanding gaze. My savings are gone, Mom. I used it for the down payment on the car last year, and to buy you that watch for your birthday. What? Sharon shrieked, pounding on Sean's chest. So you don't have a single penny to your name? What kind of a man are you? Your wife leaves and you're suddenly broke? You idiot! You absolute idiot! You're the one who wanted all those things. Sean finally snapped back, his patience gone. You're the one who told me never to let Grace control the money so she would know her place. You're the one who called her our cash cow. Well, the cow's gone now, and you're blaming me? A vicious fight erupted between mother and son. They hurled accusations back and forth, exposing each other's greed and foolishness in front of the strangers. Mr. Reno just shook his head at the pathetic display. He raised his hand, signaling his men. Time's up for the drama, he said, his voice cutting through Sharon's screams. Since there is no payment, we will proceed with the repossession. One of the large men produced a roll of wide red tape printed with the words, "Seized by bank." He walked over to the 50-inch TV on the wall. No! Sharon screamed, running to block the TV with her body. That's my favorite TV. I watch my shows on it every night. Don't take it! The man was unfazed. With a single, powerful but not violent motion, he moved Sharon's frail body to the side. Scrape! The red tape was slapped across the screen. Television. Seized. The man grunted, making a note on his clipboard. The other man went to the kitchen. They heard the sound of tape being applied to the double-door refrigerator. Refrigerator. Seized. Sir, please move from the sofa, Mr. Reno said to Sean. Sean, his face a mask of shame and fear, stood up. Red tape was stretched across the expensive leather sectional. In moments, the once luxurious house was a sea of red. Every valuable item, every piece of furniture Sharon had bragged about was now branded as repossessed property. The car in the garage, Mr. Reno commanded. Get the keys. Sean's hand trembled as he reached into his pocket. The keys to the sports car, the symbol of his masculinity, felt impossibly heavy. Sir, please, Sean begged, tears welling in his eyes. If you take the car, how will I get to work? How will my mom get to the doctor? You'll take the bus, sir. Like regular people who live within their means, Mr. Reno replied coldly, snatching the keys from Sean's hand. The roar of the car's engine starting in the garage was a sound that once filled Sean with pride. Now, it was a painful farewell. The car reversed out of the garage, driven by one of Mr. Reno's men. Sean and Sharon stood frozen in the living room, surrounded by red tape. They had no money, no transportation, and soon, no roof over their heads. The lifestyle they had taken for granted had been ruthlessly ripped away. The repo team's truck had long since disappeared, taking their car with it, but the trail of devastation they left behind was palpable. Inside the house, now dim as the sun began to set, the red SEIZ tape seemed to glow in the twilight, like malevolent eyes watching from every corner. The grand house now looked like a storage unit for junk waiting to be hauled away. Sean sat on the cold tile floor of the living room. The plush sofa was off limits, branded with its red seal. He stared numbly at his phone. The battery was at 15%, and he couldn't charge it. His power bank was in his work bag, which was in the car that was now gone. "It's so hot," Sharon moaned. She was lying on a thin rug, fanning her face with a piece of cardboard. "Sean, do something. I can't breathe. It's too dark and hot." Sean laughed, a hollow, empty sound. "Do what, Mom? You forgot? We sold the generator 2 months ago to help pay for that red handbag of yours. You said, 'Oh, the power hardly ever goes out. It's better to spend the money on looking good.'" Sharon was silent for a moment, then grumbled, "Well, you're the man of the house. You should have thought ahead. Don't just agree to everything I say. Now look at me, suffering like this." The sky outside grew darker. The house was slowly swallowed by a thick blackness. The faint moonlight coming through the windows created menacing shadows. Mosquitoes began to swarm, whining in their ears. "I'm hungry," Sharon complained again. "Order some food, Sean. Use one of those apps, the buy now, pay later ones." "I can't, Mom," Sean replied, his voice weary. "Why not? Don't be cheap with your own mother." Sean threw his phone on the floor in front of her. The dim screen lit up, showing the login page for a food delivery app. "Look for yourself, Mom." "The account is logged out," he snapped. "I tried to log back in. The password was changed. I tried forgot password. The recovery email has been changed to one of Grace's." "It's all gone, Mom." Uber, DoorDash, Amazon, Netflix, they were all Grace's accounts. "We've just been freeloading on them this whole time." Sean grabbed his own hair in frustration. "All this time, I thought I was in control. Turns out, I was just a passenger in my own wife's life. The second she kicked us out on the side of the road, we were lost." Sharon sat up, her eyes wild in the darkness. "Oh, so now you're blaming me? You're saying this is all my fault?" "Yes." Sean screamed, his voice echoing in the empty house, a dam of resentment breaking after years of being held back. For the first time in his life, he stood up to his mother. The veins in his neck bulged. "This is all because of you. You were always demanding things, always putting Grace down. Grace is cheap. Grace is barren. Grace is just a freeloader. But she was the one paying for everything, Mom. Grace paid the mortgage so you could show off to your friends. Grace paid for the car so you could be chauffeured around like a queen. Grace paid for the electricity so you could sleep in a cool room." Sean pointed a trembling finger at his mother's face. "And yesterday, you kicked her out. You said, 'This living room is mine.'" "Huh? This room belongs to the bank, Mom. And without Grace, we're just 2 homeless people squatting in it. How dare you, Sean?" Sharon shrieked, her hand flying up to slap him across the face. Smack. The sound was sharp and loud. Sean's cheek stung, but the pain in his heart was far worse. "You dare to yell at me? I'm the one who gave birth to you. I raised you by myself after your father left." Sharon collapsed into hysterical sobs, beating on Sean's chest. "You're defending that barren woman over your own mother? You ungrateful son. She must have put a spell on you." Sean didn't fight back. He just stood there, letting her hit him as his own tears began to fall. "It's not a spell, Mom," he whispered through her sobs. "It's called waking up. I was the fool. I was a man who hid behind his mother and lived off his wife's hard work. I was a failure of a husband." He backed away slowly from his mother, who had crumpled to the floor, wailing. "So enjoy it, Mom," Sean said coldly. "Enjoy your room. It's hot, it's full of mosquitoes, and tomorrow morning we get kicked out for good because the bank is changing the locks." He stumbled through the darkness towards his bedroom. He just wanted to sleep, to close his eyes and wake up to find this was all a nightmare. He hoped to wake up to the smell of Grace's cooking and the sight of her warm smile. But when he reached his bedroom door, he realized that was impossible. Taped across it was the same red SEIZD sticker. Even his bed, the place where he and Grace had once dreamed of a future, was no longer his. That night, In a dark, luxurious house in an upscale neighborhood, two people wept and blamed each other. Their stomachs ached with hunger, their skin was covered in mosquito bites, but the deepest pain was the crushing weight of reality. The sky had fallen, and Grace's gentle hands were no longer there to hold it up. Sean curled up on the bare floor of his room, hugging his knees. In the darkness, he whispered a name filled with a regret that came far too late. Grace. I'm so sorry. There was no answer, only the chirping of crickets from the backyard, seeming to mock his fate. The next morning, Sean walked out of the house looking like a wreck. His work shirt was hopelessly wrinkled from being slept in on the floor. His face was greasy, and he smelled stale from not having showered. The water had been shut off. He walked along the sidewalk, ignoring the strange looks from joggers and people walking their dogs. His car was gone. His wallet was empty. His only destination was the law office of Jenna, Grace's friend, whose address he vaguely remembered from a business card. Luckily, the office wasn't too far. Out of breath and drenched in sweat, Sean arrived and pleaded with the receptionist until she finally told him that Grace was having lunch at an exclusive cafe downtown. Sean ran again. He had to see Grace. He had to fix this before the bank sealed the doors to his house forever. When he arrived at the cafe, the contrast was a slap in the face. The air was cool and smelled of expensive coffee. It was filled with well-dressed people. Sean felt like a homeless person who had wandered into a palace. His eyes scanned the room, searching for the woman he both missed and feared. And then he saw her. In a corner booth by a large window overlooking a garden. It was Grace, but she looked different, transformed. She wore a crisp white blazer that fit her perfectly. Her hair was styled, and her light makeup made her look fresh and radiant. The dark circles under her eyes were gone. In front of her was a latte and a pastry. She looked calm, elegant, and happy. Sean forced himself to approach, his legs shaking. "Grace," he whispered. She turned slowly. There was no surprise on her face. She looked him up and down, taking in his disheveled appearance with a neutral expression, as if looking at a stranger. "Sit down, Sean. I figured you'd find me," she said, her voice calm and polite, but cold. Sean collapsed into the chair opposite her. He wanted to reach for her hand, but she pulled it away. "Grace, you have to help me." He immediately began to whine, tears welling in his eyes. "Please come home. My mom is sick. The power is out. The water is out. There's no food. We were eaten by mosquitoes all night. Please just pay the bills. I promise I'll change. I'll stand up to my mom. I'll make her be nice to you." Grace took a slow sip of her latte, letting him finish his desperate plea. "Sean," she said, setting her cup down, "you're asking me to come home. Home to where? To your mother's living room? It's our house, Grace. Your house, too." "No," Grace corrected him firmly. "It was your house and your mother's house. I was just the ATM you kept in the corner. The minute the machine ran out of cash, you both started to panic. That's not love, Sean. That's exploitation. But we're married. We made vows." He tried, playing his last emotional card. "Okay, I was wrong. My mom was wrong. But don't you care about our future? My mom said you need to rest so you can get pregnant. I promise I'll work harder so you can start fertility treatments. We can have a baby, Grace. A grandchild for my mom." At the mention of a baby, a wry smile crossed Grace's lips. It was a smile that sent a shiver down Sean's spine. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small white envelope, not an envelope of cash. "Sean, there's something I've kept from you and your mother this whole time," Grace said, her eyes locking onto his. "You both loved to call me Barren. You said I was a failure as a woman because my womb was empty for 3 years." Grace opened the envelope. She slid out a medical report and a small, empty blister pack of birth control pills. "I'm not infertile, Sean. I'm perfectly healthy. My doctor said there's absolutely nothing wrong with me." Sean stared at the evidence, his mind reeling. "Then why? Why didn't you?" "Because I chose not to," Grace answered, her voice like a judge's sentence. "I took one of these pills every single night, secretly. Because I realized something, Sean. I refused to bring a child into the hell you two call a family." She leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Imagine it, Sean. If I had a child, he would have a grandmother like Sharon, who does nothing but insult his own mother. He would have a father like you, a spineless man who can't do anything but hide behind his mommy. My child would deserve better than a toxic family like that. So I waited. I waited to see if you would ever become a man worthy of being a father. And the answer was no. Sean felt as if he'd been slapped 1,000 times. This truth was far more painful than the poverty that had just befallen him. His pride as a man was utterly pulverized. You were that cruel?" he whispered, his voice lost in the cafe's buzz. "Cruel? Was I more cruel than the two of you, who took my money with one hand and crushed my spirit with the other?" Grace shot back. She then pulled out another folder, a manila folder with the emblem of the county court. She slid it across the table. "Sign this. They're divorce papers. Jenna has already filed everything. I'm not asking for a single asset. You can have all the junk in that house, if the bank hasn't taken it yet. All I want is my freedom." Sean stared at the folder, his hand trembling. "If you don't want to sign, that's fine," Grace said, standing up and smoothing her blazer. "It will just take longer in court, and while it does, you and your mother will still have to find somewhere else to live, because the bank is changing the locks this afternoon. I no longer care." Grace picked up her purse and looked at Sean one last time. It was not the look of an adoring wife, but of a stranger pitying a beggar on the street. "Goodbye, Sean. Tell your mother I said hi, and tell her that the living room is now truly all hers, empty, dark, and silent, just like her heart." Without waiting for a response, Grace turned and walked away. The confident click-clack of her heels echoed as she left, leaving Sean sitting numbly in the middle of the fancy cafe. In front of him lay the divorce papers and the half-finished latte. Outside, his world had gone completely cold. The late afternoon sun offered no warmth. Instead, it was a final spotlight on the tragic downfall of Sharon's family. A large moving truck was parked crookedly in front of the house, its back open and waiting. Sean walked slowly into his own yard, his feet dragging. The divorce papers in his hand were crumpled into a ball. The scene before him made his legs give out. The house wasn't a home anymore. The front door was wide open. Inside, Mr. Reno was checking off a list on a clipboard. Uniformed movers were hauling out Sharon's prized possessions. "Careful with that. That's an Italian leather sofa," Sharon cried out. But her voice held no authority. She was slumped on the dusty porch, her hair a mess, her face bare and sallow. She was clutching a cheap woven fan, the only thing the bank deemed worthless. Sean watched as the gray sofa was carried past his mother. She reached for it, wailing, "No, that's my spot. Where will I sit?" "Ma'am, please stay out of the way," one of the movers said flatly, continuing toward the truck. Next came the 50-inch TV, the empty refrigerator, and the crystal display cabinet. The neighbors had gathered at the gate. Brenda and the other women from Sharon's brunch club, the ones she used to show off to, were now watching, whispering and sneering. "See? I told you," Brenda whispered loudly enough for Sharon to hear. "All that talk, and it was all built on debt." Sharon hung her head, hiding her face behind the fan. The shame was unbearable. Sean walked over and crouched beside his mother. "Mom," he said hoarsely. She looked up, her eyes swollen. "Sean, where's Grace? Did you find her? She'll pay, right? Tell these men to put my things back." Sean shook his head slowly. He placed the crumpled divorce papers in her lap. "Grace isn't coming, Mom. She's divorcing me. She's gone for good." Sharon stared at the papers, her last flicker of hope extinguished. "So, we're really broke?" Before Sean could answer, Mr. Reno came out of the house. He was carrying a hammer, nails, and a metal sign. He climbed the front gate. The sharp sound of the hammer striking nails echoed like a death sentence. In moments, a large sign was firmly attached to the gate. In bold red and white letters it read, "Property of the bank. For sale by auction. Our work here is done, mister," Reno said, dusting off his hands. He looked down at the two pathetic figures on the porch. "As per procedure, the locks have been changed. You are no longer permitted to enter the property. Your personal belongings, clothes, and documents have been packed into those two cardboard boxes." He pointed to two shabby boxes in the corner. That was all they had left. "Please vacate the premises before sunset, or we will have community security forcibly remove you," Mr. Reno finished coldly. He got into his car and drove away, following the moving truck. Suddenly, a sleek black town car drove slowly past the house. The back window was halfway down. Sean looked up. His heart pounded. He recognized the car, an airport limo service. Inside, he could see Grace's silhouette. She was wearing sunglasses, leaning back comfortably, holding a plane ticket. She glanced briefly at the house, at the for sale sign, at her former husband and mother-in-law sitting miserably beside two cardboard boxes. Sean stood up, about to cry out her name, but Grace didn't stop. She didn't even lower the window further. She simply pressed the button, and the tinted glass slid up, closing completely, severing their final connection. The car accelerated smoothly, kicking up a little dust that settled on Sean's face, carrying Grace toward her new life, a trip to Europe she'd always dreamed of but could never afford, because her money was being bled dry. Sean collapsed back down. He looked at his mother, who was now weeping silently, clutching a box filled with her old house dresses. "This living room is mine," Sean mumbled, repeating his mother's words from 2 days ago. "You were right, Mom. This empty, dark space and its memories, they're all yours now." Night fell. On the sidewalk in front of a locked-up mansion, two figures trudged away, dragging cardboard boxes behind them. Followed by the stares of their neighbors and the gnawing pain of hunger,